Hello everyone and welcome to The Chosen Generation. The Chosen Generation is a platform where we engage with young people on issues that affect them in the church. Drugs. Our focus for today is on drugs. Where do young people get these drugs? And what is the impact on them and their families? We went out to the street and asked a few young people what they thought about this issue. And this is what they had to say.
Wrong associates drive young people to taking drugs and becoming hooked. And when addiction takes place, the character changes. They will do all they can to access the drug again, which includes stealing from parents and ruining the relationship.
School and friends. It's said that the cops know that where drugs are sold but are doing nothing about it. Now, if the community wanted to go there, they would go and be violent and ban those places, which is not good.
Well, you have heard for yourselves what the young people have to say. You can also share your views with us on our social media platforms. As you can see, the hashtags are on the screen. Let us know, what do you think? We'll be right back. We're heading over to an ad break. Welcome back. You're still watching The Chosen Generation. And today we put focus on drugs. Why do young people use them? How do they use them? What's going on? And today I have a few guests who are going to help us answer these questions and try and find out how we can address this problem. With me today I have Vaughn. Vaughn, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And then we also have Elizabeth, who's also going to assist us to understand this issue of drugs within the church. Perhaps let me start with you, Vaughn. Let's discuss, when we talk about drugs, what are drugs? What are we referring to? What are these drugs that we are concerned about?
I think maybe in particular when we're talking about drugs in this context, we're talking about recreational drugs. I think, and of course. Like most drugs, recreationally started off for at some point maybe some medicinal use. So you could have drugs that are purely or substances that are purely for medicinal use being used, for recreational purposes. Okay. So I guess you could name anything from your opioids, your cocaine, your heroin, your cat, your marijuana as well. You can name all of those, and within our South African context as well, Nyampe, I guess would also be the prevalent one we could mention. So I guess that will, in terms of recreational drugs, it'll encompass all of those, your acid, LSD, all of those substances there.
Maybe I might also want to just say, I think it may not necessarily be any illegal drugs.
Okay.
Even the legal drugs, but the way we end up using them, people who end up using them, they will be abusing them.
All right.
Like he is saying, it could be any opioid drugs that are supposed to be for painkillers, but some people end up just abusing them, taking them unnecessarily and not in the right manner they are supposed to be taken.
No, that's really interesting. You have mentioned particular drugs and so forth. Maybe we can speak about what's wrong. For example, what is the problem? What has brought up this conversation? Why are we discussing this as if it's a problem?
I think to some extent maybe it might be a behavioral and a psychological issue.
Okay.
Right? I'm not a psychologist, but I think one of the classifying factors for disorders right? One of the things that boxes they need to tick is it causing harm to yourself and to those around you.
Okay.
Right. So, and substances in their manner, in the way they are, is they cause a sort of rewiring, or not even a rewire, but a certain wiring in the brain that causes a certain dependence.
Okay.
Now that sort of dependence can be harmful to yourself. So now you go back to that rat experiment on cocaine, you know, where they have the one button they have for food and water, but the one for cocaine. Now these rats, because of the pleasure and how the brain is set up with the pleasure pathway, that the brain is normally wired to say, this made you feel well, this made you feel good. Repeat this. So now you need to understand these are a number of pathways being done. These are pathways to your motor centers to say, okay, this is the act, this is the motion you did to cause this sort of pleasure stimulus. And also, while things will happen as well, is that you'll have certain things around you that predispose you to those actions. So now immediately when you're in certain situations, your brain is like, oh,
I need
my
fix.
and you will end up veering to that. So coming back to those rats would die of starvation.
Okay.
Because that's just how the brain is wired. It's like, oh no, this gave you pleasure. Do that, do that. And forget the bare basics of like sustenance. You know, so I think that's where the danger comes in terms of drug use. And
No, that's very profound. What do we see? What are the craziest things that we see people who are under the influence doing? Perhaps in the homes. I don't know of a case where someone came drunk to church or something. We often just hear the stories.
Yeah,
oh,
hear the
my
story,
son.
like-
Yeah. What are the crazy things that people do?
I think when people are under the influence of substances, you find they are no longer reasoning. They can even sell their own clothes
Wow.
because they want to gratify the pleasure that comes with taking drugs because of that dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical that triggers the reward system of our brain. So because it triggers, it then makes you want to feel good. So you keep on taking, and hence you can sell anything. You can steal your own plates, you steal them because they are family plates. You steal them to go and sell so that you can just get money to go and buy more of these drugs.
I think coming into like what are the things you've seen. Remember, a person on drugs is not in their right. It's very erratic. They're not in their right mind. So I can't even think of anything at the top of my mind, but it's a plethora of things, you know. And one of the things, just purely from a forensics point of view, is that what like they'd found is that in most suicidal cases, all right, in most suicidal cases, that's why like there are very few cases like particular suicide. One of the most important things as well to do. Toxicology reports on that.
Okay.
But what you'll normally find in most suicidal cases is that there is a substance being used.
Okay.
So now, just coming from the point of that, you can see how substances, you know, allow for certain actions, you know, even to the point of as extreme as taking your life, you know, and that is just substances. But people will go through weird things. They can just erratically just burst out and take off their clothes, depending as well on the drugs that they're using, you know. They're hallucinogens. You know, they have all these there are all these categories for these drugs. But I think one main thing as well is that you'll note anybody who's in a substance is not in their right mind,
Okay.
right? And this just has to do purely with the brain. You know, for example, you can find somebody who's been in a car crash, you know, still hyped up on all that person is not in their right mind as well. You know, they can go on and do other things, you know, but I'm just trying to explain that the level of sort of like mental takeover that drugs do to you is that you can have somebody, you know, after a few years, and I've had a few friends, and I myself, I used to love marijuana, you know, in my younger days. And when I came to my mind, I used in my younger days, you know, that's being frank. Yeah.
We forgive you.
And and one thing is the clarity of mind is taken away from you.
Okay.
That's the one thing about it. And particularly for me, one thing as well, especially if you want to commune with God, you know.
Okay.
That's one important thing that you need, like that channel you need to keep open. But drugs just really take the clarity of mind away from you to a point where it's almost like you're wide awake, but asleep.
Okay.
You know, can you imagine being wide awake asleep, going through life? So on drugs, you can wake up, go to work, go to church, go do all those things, wide awake, but asleep.
Yeah.
I think before you come, I want to speak about this. Oftentimes, you find people who say, "No, I can control. I know I'll take this much. I only smoke over the weekend. I never lose control. I only do it, and some people don't get addicted, or he's only drunk once a month, and it's not really affecting his life. Is it problematic then to have drugs if they are not really? We don't see those extreme things that we've just spoken about.
That's how it starts. That's how it actually starts. It starts as if it's just normal. It's just a little today. We are just partying today.
Social use.
Yeah,
Socially.
use, that's the
But
word.
because of the dopamine chemical that I've told you about, it will then make you want to continue. So every social outing now you will take, which then takes you away from just a one-off. Because how many social nights are you going to go to? And I also wanted to add on the craziest thing that people would take drugs and doing. You'll find someone can cut themselves jokingly. They enjoy seeing the blood coming out. And they will be telling you, look, it's not even painful. And they won't be feeling any pain because their mind is not really clear. When the drug goes out, they wonder,
What happened there?
what happened? That's why when you talk about even the suicide thing, unfortunately, they are not there to then say, this is what happened. They will have taken the drugs and they are put in a certain world of their own, and it looks all beautiful. And they kill themselves without even realizing that I'm taking my life.
That's interesting. Maybe let's bring another element. I'm interested in why people would do this, and the classic term that is used is peer pressure. What is the role? I mean, if I'm thinking about young people in the church, how do they start? What is the role of their friends? Is it wrong to have friends outside or friends who don't? I don't know. How can we deal with this?
Yeah, I think you can say it's wrong to have friends outside, but unfortunately, you'll have friends inside the church who are still like, hey, let's go. So, but the role of peer pressure, and unfortunately, sorry to say this, but unfortunately, maybe it's also how we sell our God.
Okay.
But it doesn't really appeal to young people normally, right? It normally doesn't appeal to them. And then there'll be this sort of thing then outside that appeals to them, this whole lifestyle. That, they normally find Christianity very limiting and, all the restricting. Then they go outside and then they find this opposing thing that's more liberating. So automatically they'll be more drawn to that.
Okay.
And that's it, peer pressure. And as humans, you know what they say, no man is an island. Regardless of how old or how young, a person is influenceable. From the moment you're born, you're influenced. You know how to do certain things, how to behave in particular, because somebody told you that this is how you behave like this, right? How you behave as a Christian, because somebody else told you this is how a Christian behaves. How you behave as a black person, somebody told you this is how you behave. This is how a person behaves. How you behave at your job. So at every point, we're always influenced. Influence is not always bad, right? But there's always influence. So now you can imagine somebody coming out into the space, then influenced, and particularly normally our communities or our society now, is very, very drug influenced, right? And it's because of also the mainstream acts. Like I think if you go anywhere in our music, and particularly I think the evolution of our music as well. Our music went from drug sellers making music to drug users. I think that's part of the evolution as well. So particularly our generation now, they're very heavy drug users, things like lean, which is codeine, all those things. So peer pressure will always be there. You can call it peer pressure or influence, whichever one you want to call it, but it'll play a huge role, in the same way as a Christian, having a brotherly, another brother influence me in using, hey, let's read the Bible more. That influence can draw me closer to Christ.
No, that's
just in the same way somebody else.
That's certainly true.
I also want
before you come in there, I'll give you time. This is getting so interesting. I'm finding it fascinating. But I'd love us to go to a break right now. Stay tuned. We've got more to discuss. If you've got your views on this subject, please, the social media details are on the screen. Let us know what you think and what we can do to address this problem. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Chosen Generation. Before the break, we were discussing about the issue of drugs and why young people are embarking on these decisions to take these drugs. And thank you so much, my guests, for staying with me. I want us to take it back from where we were before the break. We're talking about the reasons why young people find themselves making those decisions. And I think you raised the element of peer pressure and how your friends can encourage you to do such things. I think what else could cause this?
I also wanted to say, right within families, sometimes parents are too busy.
Okay.
They have no time to even see what their children are doing. And they have no time to even help their children understand what it means to taking drugs. And the other thing could be the underlying factors. There are children, the youths who are coming from divorced families, and they are bitter and angry about it. And some are coming, they have so much bereavement, which has been prolonged. So pressure, peer pressure will not be the cause of them taking drugs. It will just be a catalyst.
Okay.
It's only coming because the social group or this peer pressure group they are in is saying, you know what, I went through it, but I took these drugs, just try it. So they'll start as a one-off. And then you find it actually hooks them in.
Yeah, it gets
And I think maybe to just add on that, what I really wanted to highlight more than just the peer pressure is, I think what draws them in such sort of groups is belonging. So if they don't feel a sense of belonging in a particular, but like if you have these people, they're doing this. So if I take this substance, automatically it makes me part of them. So if I take this substance, if I take the cigarette, I'm a smoker. If I start drinking alcohol, I'm an alcoholic with
And
them.
there's a
But
whole
if I'm a weed
community
smoker,
around.
there's a whole community and I belong now with that. So I think that's also one of the major things as well that draws. And particularly, again, not to bash Christianity or anything like that, but I think, especially with young people, who are still sort of trying to establish their understanding with their faith. They can easily like get it misconstrued or feel sort of excluded by their faith.
Okay.
Especially if you're still young in the faith. And the older you grow, you sort of understand the sort of exclusionary things that happen, and you're not really affected by that because you understand this is your relationship with God. But in the younger state, it's very easy for you to feel unaccepted by a particular community, like particularly the Christian community. So now they go out into these worlds and then, oh no, these people accept me. I just need to take this substance. Oh, it actually makes me feel okay. So now that's what I fall into. So I think belonging as well is a big thing.
I think that's a point. I remember one young person once told me that in the church, if you can't sing or preach or speak, then there's no space.
There's no space for you.
So it seems maybe we need to think about how we can bring other people's abilities into our programs. Right. But anyway, let's move on from that. You have the aspect of, the country and the laws where now you are now allowed to use weed at your home and stuff like that. Having those situations, how do we address the problem? You're now hooked. What can we do to assist when someone is now hooked onto these drugs?
Yes, like Concord says, you can take weed within your house, but you can't do that outside your realms or outside your house, and you can't sell it. If you sell it, you'll get arrested.
Okay.
It's the law that is saying so. But does it mean that every law is correct? I think this boils down now within each particular family. The belongingness that he is talking about. We have to build it within a family. We have to ground our children, our youths. Remember, we are talking of youths and children, because people think drugs are taken by only the teenagers, the 18 years. Did you know in some places, even 9 years, 10 years, you are called to say your child was taking a drug? All because there is no enough time, like I have said. So as parents at home, we need to have special time with our children. We need to interact, to take off that emptiness your child may be going through. Because it's not about money that we give our children. It's not about things that we give them. They lack that love. And when they go out to their friends accept them. And then influence of anything goes because they have time with them. They don't have time at home with parents who can guide them.
No, that's good.
I think maybe adding on to that as well, is that I've always thought sort of like racism, drug use does not do well in contact. That's just my sort of own observation. It doesn't do well in contact in the sense that if you're a drug user, right? If you're constantly in contact maybe with your parent or with a brother or with a sister that doesn't use drugs and constantly in contact with them, what happens is that you and that's coming back as well to influence. You know, you just find yourself, and I can think back to my days. I'd have my group of friends that I'm with, and when I'm with them, I'm on marijuana or whatever. But then I had my brother, who was also my friend. And then when I'm with him, and you know, at the time you're like, oh, I'm addict, but I'm with him for 3 weeks, and I'm like, actually,
I haven't
this whole
taken
3
it.
weeks I haven't done,
Yeah.
you know, but because it's that contact with him, you know, that contact, and because they don't, you're like, okay, and you continue with that. So I think one thing about drug use is it doesn't really do well in contact, but you know, in the obscurities, in the shadows, that's where it grows. You know, now immediately when somebody's out of sight, you know, and I think that's why it's important to always keep in touch and just always make sure you know what's happening with the person, people you love. Hey, how you doing? Where you coming from?
Yeah.
What are you
Maybe
doing
that's
there?
what it means to
You
be
know?
the salt of the earth.
Right.
Very interesting. Maybe we can look at this. What programs do we need to institute, perhaps as a church or in the church, to try and stop, but also help those who are, or maybe prevent also.
Prevent.
Yeah.
I think
Okay, sorry.
Maybe we can start.
I think we do have programs.
Okay.
The unfortunate thing is they are not implemented well.
Okay.
And those that may have ideas may not be given the platforms to do that.
Okay.
So I think as a church, let us take the programs that we have. Like we have Pathfinders, we have Master Guides, we have all those. Let them be implemented in a manner that is attractive to those age groups, so that at the end of the day, they are equipped. Remember in the Bible, I like this verse, Isaiah 40, verse 19. Verse 29. It says, He gives strength to the weak, and He gives power to the weak. So that at the end of the day, if you are weak, already challenged with this, and your parents and your church groom you into the programs that are able to take off all these thoughts, you get power from God. He never fails. Romans 3 verse 23 says, for all have sinned, all of us. But one thing that makes us come back, it's because the love of God that is instilled in us will remind us without judging us. The church in the name of Jesus must stop being judgmental.
Okay.
We judge that, look at what their children are doing. They are failures. They are not good parents. But you don't know how much that family is going through. Have you sat down to find out why this child is into drugs? Have you taken time to help this mother? So as a church, let us stop being judgmental. Yes, we are Christians, but for all have sinned. If we can remember all have sinned, it will give us the heart, which is not judgmental, to assist those that are going through problems.
Perhaps we're like almost run out of time, but I want to give each of us, there's a family who's watching us, who have a child, a brother who's addicted to these drugs and it's destroying the family. Perhaps you can end with 36 seconds of advice to that family, what they can do, where they can find help, and so forth. For each of us, the last 30 seconds to close down the show.
Well, I think there are a number of drug rehab facilities that they can look into. But I think, personally, I'd say, coming back to what I said, doesn't deal well in contact. So make sure you keep contact with that person, physical, like exact contact, one thing. And another thing that I found to be a great light through drug use is purpose. Like if you can instill purpose in a person, that really helps. Right? So that goes back to the programs that we're talking to, and one thing that I'd learned as well is that an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So keep that person's mind occupied and instill purpose in them. Because with purpose, regardless of what comes, you can see things as deterrents to that purpose. And if you keep on that goal, you're able to push through those things. So I think purpose and contact could really assist a lot.
I would say there is hope.
All right.
It doesn't matter how deep you have gone into drugs. As long as you are willing to get help, you can be helped. As long as you can reach out to those that are around you, seek counseling, go to the rightful platforms within the church, engage and let them know what you are going through. And I would also say to the church, let us not be seen to push away those that are into these challenges. A church is supposed to be a clinic where everyone should come knowing that I am going where I'm going to be loved. Love conquers, love wins. God loves a sinner. He does not want anyone to perish. So as a church, it is our mandatory. We are mandated to be able to reach out to those that are going into these problems. Unfortunately, unless they reach out themselves, sometimes you can't tell that this person is going through drugs. The drug people who are going through it, some of them, they don't like it. Let's not judge them. But I'm saying to the drug abuser, you have hope. You can be welcomed. Reach out and you will be able to get help.
All right. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming to join us as we try and unpack this issue. Thank you so much for being with us in this program. I hope this has assisted you in wrapping your head around the issue of drugs. We have more for you in following episodes. It's been great to have you with us. Thank you and goodbye.